Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nous allons, we will start, we'll postpone, sorry, we'll resume our course about servlets. If you remember, we have started last week, talking about servlets within the entire architecture. Then we have studied the welcome servlet, and we also explained how data is sent from a client through the HTTP request to a servlet, and how this servlet, thanks either to a get or a post method, can extract the data contained in the HTTP servlet. We have also studied how the doGet method can play the role of the HTML which triggers the process. So today we are going to see 3 new concepts, and I will show all of them through demos also. And I would like to propose an exercise at the end that summarizes some of these concepts. And I will also tell you what are the concepts that I would like you to focus on for later lectures. So let's jump directly to where we stopped last time. Okay, first of all, let me remind you or talk about the example of the get and post at the same time that we were not able to execute. That was simply because the action, the servlet to be called, had a false name. So we have simply to change the action to the name of the servlet you are using, and it is supposed to work as I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so as you can see, the servlet works very well using the doGet and the doPost at the same time. Right. If I go back to the slides, then the first thing to do and to study is how Java Enterprise Edition can help you redirect the control of a servlet to another servlet. So a servlet, of course, if the programmer or the developer has split his or her application to different servlets to make them as modules, then we need to give the control from one servlet which received the trigger from the client. So this servlet should have the ability to give the control to other servlet. So first of all, what we do, from one servlet, we specify to which other servlet we are going to give the control. It is done thanks to this method. As you can see, it is called request dispatcher. So we dispatch the control from one servlet to another servlet. Okay, so here we specify only the second servlet because we are supposed to be in the code that exists within the current servlet, and we only specify the target servlet. This is what is specified in this statement. So, and next we are going to use this object, this variable RD, which represents the request dispatcher. Then in this context, we have 2 kinds of redirection. So we either give the control to the servlet, and the servlet finishes the work, it gives the control to other one, or answers directly the client, or this servlet, once done, gives back the control to the initial servlet. So if you want to forward and give the whole control to the second servlet, so we use forward. Rather, or instead, if you want to execute something in another servlet and it gives you back the control, you use the include. Okay, so you can see here, so I am inside one initial servlet, and I call another servlet which is named called servlet using the get request dispatcher, and then I use this RD. As you can see, the RD here, we are using the include, which means initial servlet calls call servlet does its work and give back the control to initial servlet. And this, of course, could be replaced with forward. Most of the time, later on, we are going to use forward instead of include. As you can see, so the initial servlet prints something and then call servlet, and the control is back here. So this is the second servlet, which is named call servlet. It receives the control and then it simply prints something. So here it prints call servlet and some other elements regarding the requests. Okay, because the request, I didn't mention this before, when you use a forward or an include in a dispatch, you specify both the request and the response from the first servlet. It gives the whole folder. All information received from servlet is given to the called servlet. So here is the execution. If we use include, as you can see, we call the initial servlet. It calls the called servlet, and then the called servlet does the work and gives back the control to the second servlet. Next, as you can see, we start with the initial servlet and we give the control, but it stops, it doesn't end. Why it doesn't end? Because in the call servlet, you have one statement here at the end, which is out.close. So it's like we close the printing, the response. We close the response. We close the response. Here at the beginning, the first execution, this statement was as a comment. So it didn't stop. But in this example, this one, we take off the comments and we call the out.close. That's why even if we have the call from the initial servlet to the second one, the response is closed and given back to the client. The other one is, of course, the forward, and as you can see, no control is given from the initial servlet. So this is what is done in here. I have redirection. So I have the called and the initial servlet. This is the initial servlet, which calls request dispatcher called servlet. Okay, so I have the called servlet here, and the called servlet does the work. If we execute here from the initial servlet, I have an include, and in the called servlet, I have no out.close. So as I have mentioned in the slides, if we execute this one, we're gonna get the whole execution from the initial to the second and back to the first one, right? Now, if I go back to the slides, okay, so this is the redirection. The second one is the life cycle. As you can see, the life cycle of a servlet, when a servlet is created in the web container, it is instantiated at the beginning. Okay, and then once at this status, it starts receiving some requests from clients. It executes the request, and then at the end, when it is done, it gives back the control to this position, right? If during the execution there is some error, so we go to this position. If during the execution or at the end, we destroy the servlet, so the servlet is destroyed from the server, and we go to this position. Okay, the most important thing to remember here is this initial processing of the life cycle. We are going to see it is important because sometimes you need to have some init process in order to trigger some some statements that you would like to trigger or to process only one time. This is the case, for example, of databases. I'm going to explain this later on a little bit. So here is the example. As you can see, I have the init method here, okay, which prints something to say that it is inside the init, but it create a new array list. It is an array list of integer. And as you can see, inside the service, when I call for the first time, what it does, I have a loop which adds 20 elements inside this list. And at the end, it prints the size of this list. So during the first call, this statement will print the size of my list is 20, right? Now, if I suppose that I don't have init, I don't have these items, etc., what will happen whenever I execute, the list will have always as a size, will have 20 as a size. While here, because it is declared outside and it is initialized within this init method, then whenever I click, new 20 elements are added in the list. So the list is not destroyed. When I decide to destroy my list, then I destroy it and giving it the null pointer. Okay, so this is what the first call I have 20, the second call I have 40, etc. This is what I can show you here. Okay, so now to be sure that I was inside the init, let's go back to Glassfish, and as you can see, I have the printing of calling the init method. Okay, now if I go back to my web browser and I simply refresh my page, you can see that I have 20 new elements and the size is updated. Now, if I decide to destroy, by, for example, stopping my server, you will see desktop it. Something not working. Let me simply undeploy this stuff and then stop my Glassfish. I'm not able to stop it. I don't know why. Something that, okay, I'm gonna show you later on if you want. I'm gonna fix it and get back to you. All right, so let's go back to this, but as you can see, I wanted to show you that here we have the printing of the destroy method. Okay, and of course nothing happens here. Let me check here, maybe if we update. Okay, you see that the server is down, but something on NetBeans is not working well. Whatever. Okay, so the last thing to see, the last concept, the third concept is the possibility of dealing and managing the session. As you know, sometimes when you are browsing using some web application, and for example, you receive a call from someone, or you went to bring some coffee or whatever, when you come back, you see on your application, you see on your application that the session has stopped. So how is this done? We have actually 4 possibilities to manage the sessions. We're going to study 2 ones, the cookies and the use of the HTTP session. Briefly speaking, the cookies is a a concept that is used, or a file used on, or that relies on the use of the client computer, while HTTP session relies on the use of the memory of the server. Okay, so I will start with cookies first. In cookies, we have textual data that are sent from the server to the client, and it is stored here in the client. And it is, of course, limited. Okay, this we ensure that we don't overload or try to stock too much cookies on the client side. It is done thanks to multiple methods. We have the first one, the call of the method new cookie to create a cookie, and a cookie has the two parameters, the name of the cookie and the value of the cookie. Okay, so this is what we store. So once we create a cookie, we send it from the server to through the response, we send it to the client using add cookie. Once it is stored in the server, in the client, and no one would like in the next time to retrieve it, we use the get cookies to retrieve all the cookies. Because whenever, where it is said somewhere, it is said that whenever I call an HTTP request, all the elements from the cookies are automatically sent. So we get the cookies if we need them, thanks to this one. So here is the example, okay, of how to use it. As you can see, we call the get cookies from the request, and we put all the cookies in an array. Okay, then to retrieve one specific cookie, you have simply to loop in this array. Okay, you loop from the first element till the length of all the elements inside my array, and then I retrieve one by one. Okay, cookies, I put it in this variable. Okay, and then I check what is its name, what is its value, etc. So it has a name and it has a value. Okay, so the complete example here it is. So we use the do get and the do post. In the do get, we simply create two cookies. The first cookie is called the login, and the second cookie is named pass, and each one of them has its own value. Once I create them, I put them with the response by using the method add cookie. So here two cookies are sent to the client. Now with the do post, once I call them, I first of all start by calling request.getCookies that I put in this variable cookies. Okay, and as you can see, the cookies are an array, right? So what I do then, I loop thanks to the what I have shown you minutes ago, get cookie value. I check if, for example, the cookie that is named login has a value. I check then if the cookie prénom has a value. I check if the cookie pass has a value. So of course, this is get cookie that I explained. The do post says that the cookie login exists and has a value. The cookie prénom does not exist, while the cookie pass exists and has this value. Okay, so this is how it is done. I hope this time that the glassfish will work. So it is named cookies. We are going to start again. It will start again from the beginning. This time the whole server should be loaded. So this is the first call. Now we are supposed to have the cookies on our machine, and then they are retrieved. All right. We go back to now to see the last one, which is the session. So the session, as I explained, is an object that resides in the memory of the server. So it is done thanks to several also methods. As you can see, by default, when you are using servlet, the HTTP request and HTTP response are used and exist, while it is the responsibility of the programmer to say that I would like to use it. It is there, but by default, it's not used unless you specify it. So how is it specified? As you can see here, we use this one. We say request.getSessionTrue. So here we mention through the request that we would like to use the session. And here we have only the process request. We have only one method. We don't have two. When we're going to code it twice. Right. So at the beginning, okay, I didn't mention also that within the HTTP session, I don't store only textual data, but I store whole object. In this case, I'm going to store an object which is of type person. So I create a new person, okay? And here at the beginning, what I say, so in the session at the beginning, I go to see if there is an attribute of name person, okay? And then I put it in this variable of this object person. And I check if person is null at the beginning, it is different, it is null, so I won't go here. What I do, I go to create this new person, and then I add an attribute in my session with the name person and with the variable, the whole object, which is named person, right? In the second call, when I try to check whether person exists or no, of course, this call won't have the value null. So when I execute all this stuff and I check whether or not it is null or not, of course, it won't be null. And then I am able to retrieve all the information it has inside. Okay, so if I go back now here, you will see that session, it has only one source package. Of course, we have the person, this class with the constructor and the getters and the setters, and I have this session. So when I when I have this servlet, I execute the servlet. The first call, it will show nothing, but in the second call, I retrieve the information. Okay. If I go back to my slides, I'm almost done. This is the execution. I have shown you the demo. The last one is the exercise. So in terms of exercises, I won't ask you to do everything, but I would like you to do the forward and the life cycle servlets, because both of them are going to use them in the later the coming chapters. Concerning this course, concerning the session, what I would suggest, you are going to change the session example where at the beginning it shows nothing, but it stores something. In the second call, when you refresh your page, so if you're going to count 10 seconds, so if you see that once you click in the refresh, you click less than 10 seconds, so the process is normal. While if you exceed 10 seconds, you are going to see that time is over, we are unable to serve you. Okay, so at the beginning, what you do, once you make the first call, you can, of course, store this attribute as it is done in the example, but at the same time, you have to store the time. You retrieve time from your computer and you store it inside. Once you store it in the second call, you retrieve the whole attribute and you also execute the time and you check, you calculate the difference between the first and second time. And then if it is, of course, less, you are going to continue by showing this. Otherwise, you say, of course, this session is ended. Okay, let me go back to we'll try to fix the problem in the life cycle example. I'm going to execute it again. So it is the first call. If we go back to NetBeans, we will see that we have the call of the init method. Again, if we go to our browser and we refresh, everything is okay here. Okay. Now, if I go back to Glassfish, okay, then if I stop it, I hope it will stop normally this time. Okay, so as you can see, if I go, it has displayed the call to the method destroy. If I go to my page and I refresh, it won't work. Okay, thank you very much. See you next week for the exercises, and Assalamu alaikum.